On this episode, we make an avatar and quit our day jobs.
You know, you're always so prejudiced against the MMOs.
Do you have a better opener?
On this episode, we live in our mom's basement.
We sink into a really rich economy of supply and demand with a 10-point power sword.
Quit our day jobs. Oh, man.
Welcome to Save Every Universe. My name is Alec Garcia. I'm heading to Dulvey, Louisiana to search for my wife and uncover the secrets of the sadistic Baker family.
I think I know that one.
You do?
Yeah.
I've been texting you about how scared
that's what
I
I thought.
am. Yeah.
I thought I guess we'll quibble about it next. Okay, anyway. My name's Robbie. I was a former child servant of the Sith Emperor, but escaped that life to find refuge in the Jedi Order, and now find myself the apprentice of the hero of Tython.
You pick some weird Star Wars stuff sometimes.
Spoiler, dude.
Yeah.
Whoa, Sith, Jedi, that could be anything, dude.
Anything, yeah.
That could be...
and then last time you were real sneaky about it, and you were like, oh, it's just Luke Skywalker from nothing. I'm like, dude.
Battlefront 2.
It wasn't from a specific one.
It was from Battlefront 2.
Anyway, today we have a special guest on the show. We've got Jimmy.
Wait.
Oh, who were you last week?
I was Luke from... No, last... I was Varric from Dragon Age.
Oh, yeah.
2 and Inquisition.
Right. We talked about booze and video games, and you mentioned Varric like toward the end of the episode, I think, about the good taverns and stuff like
Hanged
that.
Man.
Yeah. That's such a cool bar name.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And last week I was Nomad from Ghost Recon Wildlands.
Yeah.
It's a good game. We've all been playing it a little bit lately, and by all of us, I mean special guest Jimmy, if I may introduce him now without being interrupted. He's been on a few episodes, Raging in Games, VR, etc., etc. Welcome to the show, Jimmy.
Thank you. My name is Jimmy. I am a samurai who killed his own brother, and even though I regret that fact, if I saw him, I would kill him again.
That's how you're going to word that?
Yeah,
I think I know who you are.
probably.
Mostly because the way you looked at me when you said it. There's really no need to look me in the eyes so intently as you read your characters. That's not a tradition Alec and I follow.
You should.
If you're new to the show, they're brothers, and there was a little bit of malice in that just now. So today, the reason we have Jimmy on the show, sort of like how we had Diego on for sports. I mean, you're an expert in this a little bit. You've played them quite a bit, but I know so little about MMOs, or have so little experience, I guess.
I got enough for both of us.
MMORPGs that we brought Jimmy on to sort of bring some dimension to this discussion, and we're going to dive into to those. What have you on the docket today, Robbie?
Yeah, Alec did some good research about the history of MMOs. I was looking through his notes before we started, and there was actually a lot of things on your notes I didn't know about, especially in the early days. So we should go over that before we get into like the more modern stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mysteries.
And then also... it'd probably be good for Jimmy and I to talk about like our experiences and preferences and how MMOs have like changed and where they're at today.
So a quick shout out to, there's a really awesome 4-part video series on YouTube by Machinima, and I thought Machinima had like died and gone away or something like that.
Yeah, they're big, dude.
Yeah, they were big in I remember watching a lot of COD Modern Warfare 2 videos through Machinima.
Yeah, Halo too.
They like sponsored YouTubers through, like they were brought in as like a Machinima partner. I hadn't watched anything from them in
They're really
so
like
long.
an umbrella almost,
like a media company or something like that. Yeah, so but they have a cool 4-part series that's like the whole history of MMORPGs. So really cool. If you are interested in this topic, I recommend you go check those out. So basically, what I didn't know is it goes back as far as like the 1970s, which I thought was super crazy. The ARPANET, and before it was I guess some of that was the pre-runner to AOL and those kinds of things. But it goes all the way back to text-based games like the Rogue games, the roguelike games, and those kinds of things. But then they hooked those up to the before it was the open internet, just like closed, dedicated,
like a closed
internets,
network.
and people would do text-based things, and it was like a couple hundred people here, a couple hundred people there.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy to think about, man. Like just 200. Like we still talk about how sometimes like gaming is like this fringe, nerdy subculture thing, even though it's a lot more popular than it used to be.
More it is. Yeah.
But man, think about back then. You were like how would you even explain to people what you were doing?
I mean, you couldn't really,
You probably just lie about it.
Yeah. I think that's something that they probably were like secretly ashamed of, because
like, how do you explain it? I go on and I type in attack sword, and it's
I put a half chapter and
it's
forward,
not like you can
and then
point
someone
to something
brings
on
it
the
up
TV and like that's the console, and you're
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna go do this now. It's like you really are a nerd in a quiet dark
Yeah.
room, like
I know
typing into things like super weird, like a pretending you're having this adventure, and so much of it was in your head more than
Text-based.
seeing something on a screen.
Even more
And
so, yeah.
even more, and it was at that point still like more eclectic than something like D&D, even though those
that
games
was
were
probably
around.
even more mainstream.
Right,
than
that was.
these. Yeah.
So they probably just were like, I'm playing D&D. Like, you were lying about playing D&D.
Yeah.
Because that was cooler or more knowledgeable than what you were actually doing.
Yeah.
That's kind of a crazy idea.
Yeah. So
Or they didn't even talk about it, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's why, like, most of us haven't even heard about this, is because it's almost like a shameful thing, or it's such a small thing that these guys talk about it with the other people who did it.
It almost is like at this point it's like a weird historical, like really hardcore
small
niche thing.
blip,
They're called
yeah.
mud games, multi-user dungeons. And I like, as I went down that like little rabbit hole on YouTube, I found a couple other people that were like, oh, mud games, and like used it casually. Like everyone knows what a mud game is.
Yeah.
But that's where they started, multi-user dungeons that were completely
crazy.
text-based.
Yeah, that's nuts.
So the next story though that I thought was super funny was LucasArts actually got into it back when they had a game department or whatever. I think they dissolved it now, didn't they? Or
Yeah.
they sold the
closed the
licenses
studio.
out to
Well,
other.
So I think Disney has, like, I think they're still like in association, or I don't think
They
it's
have
like
the
what it used to
licensing
be.
It's
rights,
not
but
its own
Lucas-
big freestanding
LucasArts
studio.
as a
It's game
studio got
then.
closed down.
Yeah. So, but they did this game called Habitat where they basically took the mud game concept and then associated some graphics with it. And this was like the first time where you could pick your avatar, you could customize it, you could like have a sort of almost sim style. You could have a house, you could pick the furniture that went in there and that kind of stuff. And what I thought was just that blew my mind about this is you hear like Destiny, for example, people talking about how Destiny says making content's hard and they can't keep up with producing enough content to satisfy the really hardcore player base. These guys hit that in like way back in the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
They released this game and they were like, oh, this amount of content's going to take people weeks to get through, and they'll take their time and they'll really explore every nook and cranny. And it was like they gave it to 500 beta testers, and within hours they'd consumed all the content, and they were like, well, where's the rest of it? So it's super interesting to me that the MMORPG genre has had that content gap forever. I guess in my mind, because I've never dived into this, I thought that was a new thing, but that has existed forever.
Yeah.
That content gap problem.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing too to think about, because on the one hand, you would assume, well, they've always known about this problem. How has it not gotten better?
Yeah.
But then there's maybe just something about the nature of that kind of game that people play it for hours on end. They really dig into it.
And from a lot of the stuff that I was watching, it really seemed like people, and we've talked about this a little bit on this podcast before, but people go into it with a mindset of looking for something to get hooked on, which doesn't happen in other game genres.
No, it's much more addictive.
Yeah.
It's really not even comparable.
And that's the goal, right? Because, I mean, even now you hear, oh, that's a good MMO, but there's no end game, or there's not enough content, or don't even waste your time getting into that. Because you're going to, after you put in 40 hours, it's done.
Right.
Which is weird to think, if you were like, oh, how long did Uncharted take you to beat? Oh, 30 hours. Oh, really? That's pretty good.
It's a solid single player experience.
Yeah, wow, 30 hour, like a Final Fantasy single player game, 40, 50 hours.
Right.
If you don't, it depends. I know that there are some where it's like 100 hours. But
Yeah.
still on a MMO, that's a drop in the bucket.
Nothing
That's
at all. Yeah. But I mean, you're also subscribing mostly, not on all of them, but you are, you do buy the initial game and then you're paying a subscription fee. So I think that does give a lot of people, myself included, a sense of entitlement. Like
A right to expect regular
I better have
installments of
hundreds,
content.
thousands of hours of things I can dump this into. Otherwise, why am I giving you so much of my money?
Right.
Right. And if you think about it that way, that expectation, I mean, that's probably why there's a subscription, right? Because they're trying to always crank out new content in a way that.
And it's fair, and I don't mind giving them my money. And there's free to play MMOs, and sometimes there's no subscription, or sometimes the game is free and then there's a subscription.
Right.
But you definitely go into those with a different mindset because you're not expecting as much,
Right. Yeah, and there was a couple examples of games that I think it was. Yeah, so it was when EverQuest came out that it was the first MMO that
1999, right?
that required a dedicated graphics card, which was a huge, massive chasm from how people were using their PCs currently to what people were expecting their PCs to do for gaming. And not everyone had dedicated graphics cards. So EverQuest was like this huge leap forward in PC gaming, but it left a void where they did where one of the first major games came out that was a totally free to play online RuneScape.
Yes.
A totally free to play online thing where it could even run in a browser, and they compensated for that no subscription model by it being having advertising dollars or advertising like banner ads and space ads on the browser or inside the game.
In the game,
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
They were small. It was subtle. They were very easy to ignore.
But it was enough for the RuneScape developers to make some money as they continued to build their player base. And
So I remember EverQuest being the first thing I heard, like a lot of the stuff you heard about WoW later, the taboo, like so-and-so left his family and people are freaks and just play this game all the time. Maybe I think some of it was true, but not all of it was true. Regardless, all those like things you hear now people have associated with like World of Warcraft.
Right.
I remember EverQuest being the first thing I was exposed to where it was like, what is that? That's a game people just lose their lives to.
Yeah.
You can't ever play that game. It's evil.
Right.
EverQuest was probably my first experience with that.
Yeah, even us, like us growing up as gamers, like we had like Nintendo and PlayStation and whatever was at. I don't know what the timeline's like there, but
PS1, I think it was.
Yeah, but I don't even remember. I remember hearing about EverQuest, and it was like this awful
hardcore.
thing. Yeah.
This is
Adults
the mess of
or big
gaming.
people.
Yeah, the adults were neglecting their kids over it and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I saw a dad of a friend at the time playing it, and I thought it looked kind of cool, but this is still probably true with MMOs. It was pretty boring to watch.
Yeah.
It was super dull. That's true now, too.
Yeah,
I
it's
can't
still
stand
true.
watching somebody play WoW or even games I know and like. I'm like, oh, God, I would rather watch paint dry.
Yeah. If we were born in a different time, though, I mean, like, we might have been the people that, like, got into, like, if we would have been older in, like, the 70s or been born at all in the 70s, right? We might have been the people who got into text-based games and then, like, kind of were on board with the evolution. By the time EverQuest came, it would have been this massive leap forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in hindsight, it's hard to
Well, and
get
it was, I mean, because EverQuest was 99, and Final Fantasy, we didn't play that, but Final Fantasy 11 we did play.
We did.
And that dropped in 2002. That was only a couple years difference. The main difference, for me at least, and the only reason I really got into it was my best friend at the time. His family was pretty well off, and they would just buy the new Final Fantasy game. So we went to EB Games to get it.
Yeah, Electronics Boutique before it was bought up by GameStop.
Yeah. And, it was on the PS2, and you had to get an external hard drive, and it was this big chunky brick that you installed in the
That's
back.
right, I forgot about that.
It's as if you didn't play it on PC.
Right.
Which we didn't. And we didn't know anything about this. And they were like, you have to get this. There's a monthly subscription. You have to hook it all up to the internet. And we were like, great, cool, whatever. Chalk it up, We didn't even realize that it was like an MMO or what it meant. But it was, as soon as like we took it home and installed it and fired it up and we realized what it was crazy.
Yeah.
We were both instantly addicted. Like instantly. Like it was honestly a drug for us. And we would go to school, this was in 8th grade, and just talk about it.
Yeah.
And then go to his house and play it. And we would take turns playing, and I would like type on the keyboard for him while he was leveling, and then he would do vice versa. And it was extremely addictive, and it was like consuming our lives. But honestly, it was fantastic. Like it was so cool. This whole thing, despite the fact that you had to basically buy a whole nother console to play it,
So, but you played Phantasy Star Online. So what for you was the difference, or what was the jump forward in technology from like Phantasy Star Online to Final Fantasy 11?
Final Fantasy 11 had a lot more customization.
Okay.
PSO did have some in it, but it was you chose from, I don't know, what was it, like 3 different
Some stock
faces,
models or
3 different
whatever.
hair.
Yeah, I mean, there was a fair bit, but I mean, your armor never changed.
Yeah.
You could get your mag. Was that what it was called?
Mag, yeah.
That would change.
Oh, the
like
little
your
robot
floating
thing.
Yeah, that would
companion.
change your appearance a little bit, but like, you were in a black jumpsuit. That's what you played the whole game.
Right.
You didn't change your beard. There was no helmet.
And it was cool, but I couldn't make the guy really look like me. And even, we're talking PS2 look like me, so not really look like me, but close enough that I can bridge that gap in my mind.
Right.
And with Final Fantasy 11, it just felt much more personal. This felt like my guy, and I was in complete control of what he did. And it was a lot more detail oriented, and it was a lot slower, like leveling up and stuff. But because of that, you got a lot more attached to your guy.
Or you completely walked away. So I say I have almost no experience, and that's true. But I played 11 for like 2 weeks or something.
Venuter Jr.
Venuter Jr. characters. And what were the little guys called? Taru. That was a magic Taru or something like that. And I'm much more of like a solo player. And you're right, it was slower and it was more difficult and it was a grind and it punished the shit out of you if you died.
Time.
And I like to play a little bit more solo. I never really was into like the big raid and all that kind of stuff. So it was a hard game to level on if you weren't playing with somebody that was close to your level.
It was ultimately impossible. 11.
It really shut the door.
There was like one job you could do solo.
And even that was
rough.
Yeah, you had to have some support.
So I played that for like 2 weeks and then I walked away.
And you did solo to level 10
on
any class.
Yeah.
and then you went out to the dunes. And you had to get a party.
Yeah.
And you had to walk there or run there, but it was, I don't know, 20 minutes from Sandoria, which was the closest kingdom, which is where we were playing. And yeah, if you died, then there was an outpost that you could kind of set your home point, like a Hearthstone too.
Yeah.
But if you died and you forgot to do that, you would go all the way back. Or if you needed supplies and stuff, you had to go all the way back.
It was brutal, man.
It was brutal. And there was a zone in between. There was stuff that could aggro and kill you. So you had to very carefully, even when you were running there, it wasn't even like auto run and go do the dishes or something. You had to very carefully like make your way out there. Yeah. And you could get a teleport to that zone, but then you had to pay someone to do it. Right. This wasn't an automated.
Currency was really hard to come
by. It was
a
a brutal game, man, and it made no effort to like open the door to casuals.
No.
It was like
the dark souls of MMOs. After level, I think it was 14.
Yeah.
You would start losing experience when you die. And you could down level.
Yeah.
And that never went away. The cap was 75, and you could like be making your way out level 72, which takes like literal days of playtime to level up once. And get aggro and die and down level, and that's it. And then you have to like home point, and that's it. You've just wasted like 4 hours. And as a damage dealer, which is like the DPS
the risk
class,
is high that's going to happen.
It's high that's going to happen, and it also would take incredibly long to find a party. You would have to look for a party. You would set your flag, and then when people formed a party, because it was traditional, one healer, one tank, 3 DPS.
Yeah.
They were called DDs in 11.
But it was still the holy triad.
Yeah. And I was a Dark Knight, which is only it's pure damage. I couldn't have like tanked if I wanted to, and I loved that class. That class was I refused to.
Okay, so you're explaining this as like, oh god, it was terrible.
Yeah,
but both of you got super into it. So like, why go through all that aggravation to play this game?
That part of it was terrible.
Yeah,
the game overall was wonderful.
In what way?
Okay, so I played a lot too. I think I got to 60. Level 60-ish,
yeah.
Which still took,
takes a long time.
like 2 years or something. I mean, it took forever.
Yeah, but we were college roommates, and I haven't, like, we've both gone through, like, periods where we, like, really binge a game hard or something like that. Yeah. I've never seen you go that deep and that dark and
that's my dark.
The one.
That's
even
the one.
WoW, not anything else.
Everyone talks about WoW. Mine was 11. Yeah. When I played WoW, I was like I'd cleaned up my act.
Yeah.
I knew how life worked. I had gotten over it. I never quite, like, I never failed a semester.
Yeah.
But I had a couple C's.
Yeah.
You know, which
like,
for me
was
was.
Gonna not go today.
If I pushed myself, that's a joke. These were easy classes, and I still like barely got credit on a couple of them.
Yeah.
And it was because of the system, because it took like 4 hours to get a group. Mm-hmm. We'd be like trying to get a group. We'd finally get one, and then you would come in and be like, "Hey, let's run to the store." I can't go to the store.
No, I would be like, "Hey, man, I'm gonna go get something to eat at the cafeteria," and you'd be like, "Oh, hold on, I'm waiting for a group. I can't. I've been waiting for like 20 minutes. I'm gonna wait." I'm like,
well,
okay.
Yeah.
I'd go eat, and I'd come back like 30, 40 minutes later. Oh. And I'd be like, "Hey, man, I'm going to run to Walmart and get groceries or whatever." And you'd be like, "Oh, I just got a group."
Yeah.
So you were waiting for like an hour sometimes just to get a group.
Oh, that was a
you
good
were waiting
that
to
was a good
play.
session.
Rob played a paladin, which is a tank, and it's so much easier
Tanks,
to get a
it was
party.
like an hour maybe. Sometimes not even that. Sometimes it took me so long because I would make them bring Jimmy. So Jimmy and I would pair up, and they would be like, "Oh, we need a tank." I'm like, "Well, you got to bring my Dark Knight brother." They'd be like, "No."
Yeah.
Or they'd kick people. They'd kick another damage dealer because they needed a tank.
And didn't know the damage dealer. I would typically try and form the party. But if we couldn't find stuff, then we would both put the flag up, just sit and wait.
And I had the special auto-translated Japanese, like so that Japanese people could read it.
You could put a note when people were like, basically
just to like broaden your chances of getting a group.
Yeah. So when they selected you, they would pull up your character, and the note would be there like must invite Dark Knight.
I ask you again. Why? Okay. Why go through all of that?
We probably have different reasons. Mostly, I played to play with him because we had moved away from our hometown. He and I were like getting along really well, and there wasn't a lot of things. Like at that point,
from a distance.
We couldn't do anything together from a distance. We didn't have console. Xbox
console
Live
online gaming
wasn't really out yet.
yet.
Halo 2 came out a little bit after this.
Yeah.
I think I was still playing during that time, but it was very new. And if you remember, you and I went on an anti-Xbox kick during a little bit after.
Switched to PS2 and
So we didn't have anything to play. I had a PC, so I didn't have to go through all the hoops that he did. I had gotten a college computer, so I did it to bond with him. When I look back on it, that's about the only good thing I can think of why I did it. We had some really fun moments.
Yeah. Well, and those moments, like that was why I did it. When you did hit something, when you got your artifact armor, which was like the first big deal at level 60, class-based, hardcore quests, crazy hard to get. It was satisfying. It made it all worth it.
Right.
You know, I mean, ultimately in an MMO, what you do is you achieve something cool, and you go into town and you sit, and you have people admire you. I mean, bottom line, that's what you're doing. You can lie to yourself and say like, oh no, I'm social, and no, you're not. Like, you want to
be admired
flaunt
for that gear that you got from that hard.
And you don't have to like go out of your way. I mean, there's dicks that shout about how great they are, and those guys are dumb. But ultimately, you do want some admiration, you know. And getting that and being that was amazing. And that, like I said, that class Dark Knight, it was this. You know, Dark Knight. They used blood magic and black magic and stuff, but they were doing good things. Right. You know, you were fighting bad people. Right. And that was like such a relatable thing to me that, you know, I probably RP'd with it a little bit, but
role played.
I didn't feel that in any other game, you know, and like you said, PSO, like it was fun, but that was me in Vanadiel, you know, like I was that character. I was that bad motherfucker with the scythe and the blacky spike armor, you know, like going and helping the dumb little Tarus from getting eaten by the Kraken on the ship. You know, like you had these epic moments, and I'll never forget, there's several moments in that game still. I remember them like we did them yesterday, and they were just so enjoyable, and they hyped me up so much.
So were they like big like raid style event kind of thing?
There were, but most of my favorite things were like two-manning stuff with Rob that we weren't supposed to, and getting out of these like oh shit clutch things. Like so, like for instance, there was one of the very common transport systems was boats, and it would take 15 minutes, and you would actually be cruising along, and you could get invaded by pirates, right? And you could stay below deck. And they would be fine. And Rob and I were on a ship. I think we were like 60s. We were pretty strong. We weren't capped, but we were pretty badass. And a Kraken showed up, and this was a super rare event. Yeah. And we were below decks, and you can hear it. I mean, it announces an event, and we heard people dying up top. Nice. And when monsters in that game, you had to check them, and it would tell you kind of their power level. And
this was a big deal to know like whether you were in out of your league.
Yeah, there was no level above. There was no red skull. You had to check them, and what it said kind of meant how good of a chance you had. And it went, what was it? Too weak to be worthwhile. I can't remember the one after that. Decent.
That all sounds vaguely familiar. Actually.
There was like 5 levels, and then it was like hard, very hard, and then the monster strength is impossible to gauge. If it says impossible to gauge, you gonna get it. You know, like
you cannot take this thing. It's gonna take at least 5 or 6 people, maybe more.
Yeah,
to take that thing
who knows? It's question mark. It's the same as like a question mark mob.
Or like
now.
The skull over something. And,
And anyway, so this thing shows up. We check it. It's impossible to gauge. Like, I don't know if we can do this. And then people started dying. Yeah, probably dumb little Tarus. They're like kids. They're literally like little midgets, and they have these little child faces. They look like they're 5.
I'm not sure that's what I played.
If you've seen Willow, it's basically a bunch of those running around.
That's hilarious.
But you feel bad.
With a dumb little knife.
Oh yeah, like they just look so dorky. Yeah. So you get almost protective of them when they're in trouble. So Rob was like, "We gotta try, dude," and I was like, all right, dude, let's do this. So he ran in and like flashed the thing and got aggro, and we were going at it. And the way that it worked, Rob had an ability, I think it was called cover or something, that if I got behind him, my threat would get pulled to him. But it was a big cooldown, and it only lasted for a little bit. So it's not like we could just do that the whole time.
But he could pull the aggro, take cover, and then you could do your big.
No. He was covering me.
Oh, gotcha.
With that ability.
Yeah. So he would, if somebody did high damage, it would pull off the tank. So we had to balance like back and forth.
The damage was going.
Well, just how much he was doing, what I was doing to keep the threat. Like it was, and this is a common mechanic in all MMOs and stuff, but in 11 it was rough. It was rough.
Even
really,
a good tank
really hard.
If you had good damage, and I was good damage, you would struggle to keep hate. Yeah, it was
there was an art to it.
He would taunt and then stun as I pulled, and then blind as I pulled. So did you guys
end up killing it?
Well, yeah, but dude, it came down to it. Like I was behind the thing. I could only take a couple hits. Yeah, and I pulled, and I was one shot, and Rob was out of everything. The only thing he had left was cover. Yeah, so I ran behind him, and I was like, pop it now! And he did it, and I popped my weapon skill, which is like your big cooldown. Yeah. And like with both of us at one shot, we finally killed this thing. And like, dude, these guys came up to us and were like thanking us and clapping and cheering. It was so
They were
cool.
like real people too. They were like cheering.
Yeah,
us
these were other
on.
players. Yeah, and they were like,
They wouldn't even join. They didn't join the fight.
No.
because they were
They
pretty
just hung back
convinced
and
we were going
watched
to.
you guys?
Well, I
Yep.
think they knew we were going to lose.
we should have lost.
We should have lost that fight.
Like, we
and
were-
so they stayed out of the fight so
Yeah.
that if we died, they could just run.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
if
if
they
they
would've hit
helped,
it-
they would have pulled aggro. They would have been engaged, and it's a boat. There's nowhere you can
Yeah,
go.
that makes sense. I mean, like I played WoW for like a month and a half, 2
Yeah.
months maybe, and that was actually one of my favorite parts. And I heard somebody talking about like modern MMOs and Destiny and those kinds of things. That's what a lot of them are missing is those moments where you get in out of your depth
Yes.
and still survive, or still pull something off, or still sneak in and grab an awesome piece of loot you shouldn't have been able to touch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of those are missing. And I did a undead rogue. I
Yeah.
think is that a thing? And I would use my cloak and like I'd sneak in and I'd sneak past like high level guys
Yeah.
if I could, and sometimes they'd find me and slaughter me and stuff. But I think that makes sense, having those big epic skinny your teeth moments. That's cool.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think maybe 11 had too much of. It's like it's easy to glorify it, but there were more hours of just eating dirt, begging for a res,
Big time.
Yeah.
getting your ass kicked. So like after I finally hit a point where I was just like, I can't play this game anymore. Like
Yeah.
I was actually losing out on my college life. I was like, man, I can't do this. And I was apologetic to Jimmy because it was like one of the few things we did. So ultimately that was how I convinced him to play WoW.
Yeah. Right.
So look, I know you're going to poo poo at this. I know you're going to turn your nose up at it.
Well, yeah.
What was your beef with WoW?
Well, it was so 11, I think, peaked 500,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
And I think that was 2006, 2007, which is
Yeah.
when I was very heavily into it. And that was,
Which was big for an MMO at the time.
yeah. Especially, WoW was, I don't know if it was bigger yet. But
What did WoW peak at? Like 12 million or something?
12 million, something
Yeah.
like that, yeah. But yeah, 11 was doing very good.
Yeah.
And that was the joke, is that, back then it was a more elitist crowd that played 11.
Right.
So there was constantly a joke of like, if you got sick of it, you were going to quit and go play WoW. It was like you were going to move down and
To something.
like,
Well, and WoW did get praised though as being a little bit more open, a little bit
Open,
more,
yeah.
more accessible.
And it was, but I mean, and comparing them, like now, of course, it looks a lot better. But back then, like WoW graphically looked like trash. 11 was beautiful.
Yeah.
And we would call WoW when we played 11. We would call it
That's still true
Animaniacs
though. I
Online.
mean, with like WoW, there's still a lot of people that play WoW, and it's like it's old now, and people,
Yeah.
like that, it's still kind of the king in a lot of realms. But you always comment about how Final Fantasy, that's something that Final Fantasy's always done right, is that they make really incredibly beautiful games, online or off.
And now, if you look at 14,
Yeah, that's.
I have trouble playing any other MMO. And I have trouble playing some games because
Yeah.
I'm just like 14 looks so damn good.
It looks great, yeah. So I kind of had that elitist attitude about it. And what happened was I had just moved to college and I hadn't really like reset up. I had gotten 11 on PC. They had like a complete package for $30, but I hadn't like set it up and gotten into it.
Yeah.
So I was kind of taking a break. And Rob was like, hey, I know you don't like it and it's kind of beneath you, but we have a private server for WoW. It's free. Just come check it
forgot
out.
we
It was
did
Nate's server.
Yeah, it was an illegal server that somebody had. It was just a private server, and we were screwing around on
and it was Rob and a lot of the SDB guys.
Gotcha.
SDB was my old
Clan.
clan. Yeah.
So yeah, I jumped on there and was like, it's cool. I think I was playing a Night Elf Hunter. It was all right, but there was 6 of us on that server.
Yeah.
So there was very little. What the turning point was for me was, I think I was like level 33 or something. And I died and I didn't lose experience. And I asked Rob, I was like, oh, is there when is the barrier removed? Like, when am I going to start getting shafted?
Yeah.
And he was like, dude, never. And I was like, let's fucking do this, dude. And I like never
And there
looked
were
back.
flight paths to get you around. I was like, you're never going to
So you
have to
could
do
set a
that
flight
again.
path and not have to walk manually.
Yeah,
to
it's like
places
you could
and
just
stuff.
go make a sandwich and fly to your destination.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah. There was a lot of small details that WoW was so much better on.
Yeah.
And really at that point, the only thing 11 had was graphics
Yeah.
and the fact that I had sunk an ungodly amount of hours into it. But
Yeah.
that was, I very clearly remember when it happened. Like when I figured out you didn't lose XP when you died, I was like, this is amazing. This is everything it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
WoW, even today, because we've gone back and played every expansion. Even today, I think one of the reasons it's still done so well and still hung in there is because its mechanics are still like that. They have so many smart, nuanced things that other games just don't do. Whether it's things like you queued up for something and you could queue up for something else, or if you
Or someone can jump in with your queue.
and it doesn't like delete your 20 minutes of waiting, your 10
Yeah.
minutes of waiting.
Yeah.
Just like those little quality of life.
Yeah,
things.
little quality of life things that
lot of
like
little
are a lot more
details.
accessible, easier for somebody with a job
Right.
or with family or whatever
to play in smaller chunks. And
there's none of this, oh, I got to play for 4 hours.
One of the other things I think they did smart, just from like kind of looking in at the history of this after studying or reading about MMOs in general, is that WoW did. How long has it been around? 10 years? 15 years?
It came out in 2004, end of 2004.
Dang.
Yeah, so I think we're almost
like coming up on 14 years.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's amazing, right? So, but they've been doing regular installments of DLC and expansion, and they've never released a sequel.
Right.
And as I was reading back through some of these, like Lineage 2, EverQuest 2, like these MMOs,
Guild Wars 2.
Yeah, they tried to release a sequel. It usually like killed the franchise because it ended up splitting their player base, and people were so invested in the original. I think that's another thing that WoW has done really well. That now that loot shooters are a thing and they're trying to grow these giant player bases, are not doing right.
Right. Right. Destiny 2 does the same thing, right? I mean, I jumped on and did a raid in Destiny 1. Yeah. There were more people in the tower in Destiny 1.
And there's been so many people that say, oh, I just went back to Destiny 1 because there's more people playing it and it's way more fun and I have all my gear. And so, they totally split that player base and they gave somewhere else for their own player base to go instead of crossing over to the sequel. Yeah. So,
well, and they were for a while, they were developing a new MMO.
Yeah. They thought about doing it. There was talks of either a separate
Project
one.
Titan.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
It ended up getting rolled into Overwatch, and I think that was a big reason was they realized that like you're not going to get everyone to come over plus new people. Right. You just won't, especially when you have a mammoth that big. Yeah. You're only going to split it and kind of hurt yourself. Yeah. And they had plenty of ideas to keep going with expansions. Yeah. So why not just do that?
Well, and using Destiny as the example, because that's the big thing right now. But they really, if they, like in hindsight, if they would have kept that and just kept releasing DLC, even as like the graphical fidelity would have started to look dated the way WoW does now, people would have continued to play it because their loyalty was there, because they put so much time in, because there was so much history with the raids and the guns and all that stuff. Yeah. It really, with MMOs in particular, sequels seem to be the kiss of death.
Yeah, well, if you think about it too, most of the stuff, I mean, not to turn this into a Destiny bashing thing, but most of the stuff they said,
no, it's just it's a modern example of because like WoW did so many things so right. Like I was reading some stuff and they were saying that WoW, their player base grew so big so fast that they killed other MMOs that existed at the time, because they just sucked the player bases out of all those other games. So it's a monster, and it did a lot right. So if you're comparing, I think you can compare that to modern loot shooters and MMO type stuff that is going wrong, very, very wrong now. And I think it's just an interesting analysis question, but not to bash it. But
I was just going to say, it seems like a lot of the things that these games do, like probably Guild Wars 2, but definitely Destiny 2, they say, well, now we can update this and we can make this, we can deliver content quicker. We can do all these things. Yeah. They can't really. They end up not really making things as good for themselves as they thought they would. Right. And that's not worth the cost of having the player base and doing all that. So the few benefits they gain,
they can't keep up with people's appetite to consume. They can't keep up with the content gap. And if they would have stayed in Destiny 1, they could have done stuff like they did with the final victory lap, where they went back and updated old raids, and they could have done that as they were developing content, and it would have at least slowed down that rate of people getting pissed off of not having enough content.
And WoW does that all the time.
Right.
Like pretty much everything at this point has probably had another iteration, like a new recycled version, a new
time walking. And,
you either go back in time or they update they bring the gear forward. And you saw that 14 does that fairly well. They'll give you like hard modes of the dungeons that were leveling dungeons. And then what you do is they just give you like a different entrance point, change the environment. They even come up with a pretty easy, quick story of why you're doing it. Yeah. And then you're running it again. And it feels different enough that I'm not like,
the whole dungeon is different. Yeah. It's not just a harder level.
No, and it's not even necessarily the same monsters, but it feels fresh and new and completely different. Right. But it's the same dungeon. Yeah. And they've managed to just breathe new life into it. And 14, I think, learned that smartly. I think Square pick that up on what Blizzard did. Yeah. Because a lot of MMOs are just not good at doing that. Or maybe they'll just say, it's a hard mode, go do it again. Yeah. And that kind of sucks. You're like,
unless there's like something else interesting there, like there's different exclusive rewards that only can drop in during that thing or whatever. Yeah.
But 14 kind of does both. They give you the new rewards and they reshape it. WoW does that some, and sometimes it's just a hard mode of or whatever.
Yeah, I just think that's because we've talked about it a little bit before, but I just think that's fascinating that there really are different rules with a very community centric game, like MMO type game, whether it's Destiny or whether it's World of Warcraft. Keeping the player base unified and giving them regular installments of content. It's like a very opposite thing from the annualized like one hit installments like a Call of Duty or like a Assassin's Creed or something. They do operate by different rules, it seems. It's interesting.
It's surprising that they wouldn't have learned that, right? Because I mean, WoW's been doing this for almost 15 years.
Yeah.
Like there's been enough games.
Yeah, you would think that Bungie would have went and hired like poached somebody from WoW.
Yeah.
Bungie played WoW.
I was gonna say that,
the Halo 3 credits are riddled with For the Horde and all like they had big clans. They were competitive. Everyone knew what server Bungie played on.
Yeah. And so maybe it's Activision or EA. Like I heard a story with EA. I think they were behind Ultima Online back when MMOs were really first coming into prominence, and EA was like, "There's no way this is going to work." And so maybe it's just those big publishers they want to operate by the rules they know how to operate by. And so when it came to a console shooter, they were like, "Oh, we have to annualize this, or we have to biannualize this."
But I mean, that's an ultimate mistake.
Absolutely,
because you're breaking into. You should learn from what's established and what's good.
Yeah.
The fact that almost once a year you're going to read an article that there's some MMO that calls itself the WoW killer.
Right.
And I've been hearing that term for
forever,
6 years at least. And no one could, because they might do part of it, but the stuff that they were doing on their own was crap. Like the problem to me with 14 and Destiny 2 and all these games is it's immediately obvious if something is lacking because you have experience with WoW and and everyone does at this point. And like
the
you
bars
said,
come up with the genre,
including the developers
evolved,
and including the guys who make it. Even if they don't hire someone, they should know, this is a convenience thing. You're like, why do I have to go to space and then go to the tower? That doesn't make sense to me. Yeah. It shouldn't have taken you 2 games to fix that. That should have already been there.
Right. Right. I would say at this point, if you see some of the deficiencies in 14, it's more like they're kind of, WoW has added this function in 14, that wasn't out when 14 started. Some of the queue time stuff, they added it pretty quickly.
Yeah, some things, but I mean, look at the PvP in 14. If you compare it to WoW, it's a waste of time.
I don't think they want to. I think they're not even bothering. I think there's some things that are like, yeah, we're not even going to try and compete with that. Like,
Final Fantasy does seem like a more PvE group story.
It is, and that's fine, but then don't put it in, because they
don't do it poorly.
They do are like, hey, in 3 months from now, you're going to get 2 new battlegrounds, but they suck, and the queue times are 30 minutes, and it's like, I agree. If you're not going to do it right, don't do it, but don't half do it. And then,
that's fair.
Because they are pulling time that they could put into PvE content to give you kind of crappy PvP.
Right. When people would respond much better to like a really awesome new expansion.
Dungeon or raid or exactly.
Well, and some of the reason the queue times are crap are because that crowd doesn't play. I mean, if everyone was playing, the queue times would be great, but because that crowd doesn't play as much PvP, it's like a small percentage of hardcore people
trying to get a game.
Yeah, so then you're waiting way longer for a match than you would in a different MMO.
But I mean, it's also it's just not as fun, the PvP. Think about how many epic moments we've had holding a tower in Alterac Valley in WoW.
Yeah.
What happens in 14? Like, oh man, we pushed them out of our base with the flag.
And that probably is like a development experience thing. Like Square Enix they don't do PvP stuff.
Yeah.
But Blizzard has been doing PvP stuff for a good while.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, even the stuff that had a story like StarCraft or Warcraft, those were mainly PvP games.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, everyone played the story, but mostly even the longevity of
like
those
Diablo
games.
2 and stuff had PvP mechanics that were a lot of fun.
Yeah,
they've been doing it a long time.
Right.
And those are the things you did in those games well after you beat the story.
Right.
But that's kind of what I was saying before. If you're going to put it in your game and you're going to go into a market that WoW's in, you need to do it right.
Yeah. You do at least meet the standard.
I mean,
what people expect.
Rob and I both hop back and forth between WoW and 14 constantly. We'll play one for 3 months and the next for 3 months. And that's one of the main things that pulls me back to WoW is that it does have a lot more in game, and the PvP is just enjoyable, man.
Right.
I'll hold a point with my hunter for like 1v4, and I'm calling out to my teammates, and they get there a minute later, and it's just epic, and it's just a really good feeling.
Yeah.
I've ranked high in 14 in PvP, and I've never had a single moment like that.
Yeah.
There's just not, the setup's not even there to achieve that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I've had some decent moments, but nothing like what we've done in
the elusive hero moment.
Yeah, exactly.
And developers now talk about like, oh, we tweaked this in PvP to give you hero moments. And it's like, I don't think it's that easy.
It's not that easy.
No. Yeah.
That's about our time, gentlemen. Any closing thoughts, Jimbo? Thank you for being here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It is a very addictive thing, but I think it's great. I think some of my best memories are from playing MMOs, definitely across games. You just can't let it consume you. You know, don't be that guy who loses his kids to EverQuest. You know, take it in moderation.
Yeah, you know, lately I've been like in a slump. I like want to play WoW, but I fire it up and then I'm just like, yeah, I don't give a shit about dailies or weeklies or anything. And you know, if Jimmy's on and we run something, that's fun. But like most of the people we played with, they're gone, and I think it's lost that social aspect. And I just don't care about. I've never really cared about the world of Warcraft.
Right. All the lore and
I don't really. I mean, I know it all at this point, but like I always found 14's world, like all of the Square games or whatever, richer.
Yeah.
But then it kind of suffers from the end game thing where I hit a wall in 14 where I've caught up with the content.
Yeah.
I log in and I just go, well, I'm not going to go run PvP matches.
Right.
So actually it's been kind of nice. I've been using it to play The Witcher. Or Horizon Zero Dawn or whatever. Like I get a lot more gaming in if I'm not playing an MMO.
For me, I just want to say thanks, gents. I feel a little bit like the sports episode where I like kind of came into this not really. I have a little bit of experience, but not much, and it was cool to hear the stories and get a little bit of a peek behind the curtain of why you hit your head against the wall with these games.
I do want to say one more quick thing. I forgot to mention it earlier. I do think there's a lot of the bleed effect on MMOs. Like a lot of us are getting kind of tired of it, and it's cool, but it's not great. Yeah. And I think the next step is going to be VR MMOs.
Interesting. Yeah. So I was, as you said, then I think this is a topic. We could do this a whole nother episode on this. Of you were saying, I don't want to do the dailies and all that stuff. It kind of seems like people are getting fatigued with that. Come make our game your habit. Like it's these developers are sort of peddling to be your addiction, and it's I think people are getting a little bit fatigued with it. And where's that going to go next? I think that's a topic.
Everyone's done that drug, and we need something harder now.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you for listening to Save Every Universe. If you enjoyed this episode, please go give us a review on iTunes. It helps us out.
And if you have any questions or topic ideas, you can email us at saveeveryuniverse@gmail.com. Did you have something else you want to say?
Nope, I'm good.